We're going to work on this ropes session here. We'll be using kind of a 3-minute progression here. So there's going to be a lot of different moving parts here. We're going to start with alternating. We're going to count 10 on each side for the small alternating ropes. Small alternating, we see we've got at least 2 or 3 waves at all times. They're going to count 10 on each side. Then we're going to go 10 alternating big waves. Think of a drummer here, really big drumming. We're going to look down the line of those ropes and see a nice clean vertical whip and crack down to it. 10 on each side there. And then they're going to go back into their small alternating. They'll go back into small alternating for 10 on each side. They're going to kind of bounce back and forth between these 2 different patterns, switching every 10 reps for the entire minute. We'll set that minute, we'll hear that bell, then they're going to go on to their next progression. Their next progression during minute 2 is now going to be starting with both hands glued together. We're going to work on small waves here. They're going to go 10 small waves. Small waves, we see at least 2 to 3 waves in that rope pattern at all times. We'll do 10 of those. Get their 10, they'll switch, probably take a step in and go 10 big slams. This is a nice place to kind of catch that pace, catch that kind of conservation of energy. We get a good whip down, cracking through the ground, and then they're working on some nice powerful core following through. I'm going to cue hands to heels, and loading up is really that concept of the hips in that kettlebell swing-like pattern. Our third minute is going to be a side to side, so they're going to use both hands together and just really working that side to side twist here. So side to side twist. They're just going to keep that down low, down on the ground there. And again, we're going to have to get more slack in this, right? So everybody take a step forward. What we want to try to cue here, rather than lifting it on this side to side, I want to kind of keep it low and we want to see nice and reckless. So keep that rope on the ground and get a good quick side to side, so we're not pausing one to the next. Now we got our rhythm. Side to side whipping, and we might even tighten them up even a little further. So a little smaller and a little quicker, right? A little smaller, a little quicker. We'd like to see 2 to 3 waves in at all times. Corey's keeping his hands low so that rope does not lift up off the ground. We'll go 10 to each side. And the last pattern we're going to work on here, we've got to flip those cues up. So we flip the hands up, the tips are now pointing towards the ceiling, and we're going to use a rainbow pattern. So we're going to think of this almost like a hip toss, grabbing from one side, tossing with a pivot to the other side, tossing to the other side. Modifying here, Corey's could use a single arm, and we're going to actually just kind of think of Corey's start point. If I pause Corey here, and we start here, we're going to use this outside hand, and he's going to go back to that normal grip here, and he's just going to whip from one side, switch it to the other hand. Whipping, using that pivot, switch hands, pivot, switch hands, pivot, switch hands. If I pop back over to Louisa, she'll show us a few more on each side, and think of just kind of whipping from those shoelaces to those shoelaces, and we see that nice curly cue going down the ropes, nice big whip, and a lot of power from side to side. So really try not to lift up so much on that rope there. Setting up here for a 3-minute row. First thing we're going to ask from Corey is kind of a moderate round. So really stroking nice and long, working on those elbows, reaching out way past those knees. Good straight arm reach. A little further on that straight arm reach. And some of you guys might start to get comfortable with not just elbows over those knees, but some of you guys might play with even elbows between knees. For Corey, in this first minute, I'm going to ask him for kind of a moderate pace, which is less than 145 on his 500-meter split. So he can kind of settle into that. He's a little head of pace here, but I'm going to ask him to hold that for the entire minute. When we switch into the second minute, he'll hear that buzzer, he'll hear that reminder. I'm going to let him kind of settle in. I don't want him going shorter strokes. I want almost longer strokes, just less intensity, right? Important to remember, don't rest those elbows on those knees. It's okay to cue a little more of a lean forward. So I'm going to say, Corey, better than 2 minutes here, right? Ladies will have up to 2:30 on this. This is our easy rounds, right? Long strokes, elbows reaching nice and locked out straight forward, coming back nice and long. Now our third minute, I'm going to ask for hard. We went from moderate to easy. Corey's got to reach a little bit longer, a little straighter on those elbows, all the way into that catch. You need to hold this under 140 on display for that entire last minute. Big long reach, big long stroke. Try to get that chain in to nothing left. So that way we've got all of our legs loaded up and firing out of that hole for that complete last minute. In this variation, we have the one arm squat and row with a rotation at the top. Kind of think of that lawnmower pull. So really gonna be working on letting those eyes follow the elbow. One thing I'm gonna cue here in setup. So Louisa is got a pretty solid challenge here in front of her. I'm gonna actually ask her to step back a little bit further, and we gotta start the band with tension here. That way, as she squats, she can reach forward, and we're gonna see a reduction in resistance. But in order to extend that elbow or lock those hips, she really has to throw the drive of that left glute, or it's that opposite glute. Now she has her reach and fire. Her eyes are gonna follow her elbow towards the wall behind her. She's locking out on that glute, and she's getting a good lean forward into that reach here. One of the issues you'll see here is if someone starts here with no resistance and they are kind of pulling on that band or starting with a bent elbow into that squat, chances are they're gonna finish with their butt on the ground. So Louisa will work nice and slow, really slow, strong, powerful strokes, finishing on that pause. No rush here, she's here for a minute, and then so switch hands to the other side. Again, she might feel like she started on her non-dominant side. If this is her stronger side, she might be able to step back a little farther, learning that fire of this side glute, right? Right glute goes into that left hand. Want to see that thumb plug into the armpit there, firing on that finish point. Our last minute, we're going from the low anchor point with that lawnmower start. Louisa's gonna reset that band into the halfway fold. We'd say maybe chest height or so. So now we've got our 2-arm squat and row. Again, the resistance on this is a lot to support, right? This is a lot of resistance. Louisa's gonna start back with a little bit of stretch in her band. She's gonna squat down and reach forward and lean back and pull on those elbows. Squat and reach, lean and pull. So the beauty of it, just kind of finding that lean back point here, where she can feel like she's able to keep her heels grounded, squeezing those glutes, finding that balance point, really no rush here, just being able to trust these bands and find those hips in full extension. She's getting a great job on extending those hips, probably more tired on the glutes than she is on those rows here. So that's a full minute, great pace on that. Getting ready for our 3 minutes here on the bike. Again, staying with that theme or that pace of moderate, easy to hard. So Louisa here using our spin bike variation, she's gonna get going. I really wanna see the cadence at about that 80 to 90 on cadence, and then using that tensioner to adjust her exertion. On a scale of 1 to 10, she should be at about that 7, right? So good yellow zone start here, and she's gonna hold that for the entire minute, really just getting a good amount of breath into her lungs. And I do want her kind of working towards that, right? Kind of the upper yellow zone on that. In the case of our air assaults, we're starting at about that 50 to 60 RPMs there. As we transition into that second minute, we're gonna kind of get in a little bit longer. In the case of this spin bike, Louisa's gonna hit into this climb position. She might like a little more tension on that climb. Really important when we are in this climb position out of the saddle here, we have enough tension so that we're not falling or crashing to the bottom of those pedals. We should be kind of hovering in between that fully down position and focus really on the upstroke here. So think of almost hiking on a climb or kind of mountainous rocky path there. So Louise is cruising there. She's hanging tight for the next minute or so, minimizing the side-to-side bounce or that crash to the dead bottom of that pedal. In the case of the air assault, we are going to be cruising more of that 40 to 50, catching that breath, long strokes there. I'm going to seat Louisa for our final minute. I'm going to ask her to ramp it up. In the spin bike, we're going full speed, full cadence, and a good amount of resistance. So first is speed, right? Want to get you up to full speed, about that 90 RPM. We want to see that sprint without the resistance. And once we're able to hit that speed, then we're going to get on about a half turn of resistance to try to hold it, max exertion for as long as we can throughout that minute. This is our hard, right? This is our hard, this is our empty the tanks. When we get to our air assaults, this is that 60 or 70 or more on the RPMs, keeping it long and strong for that entire minute. This is hard. The other stuff was moderate and easy. Finish on that hard.